He's an incident commander for the United Cajun Navy. So, Josh, welcome to the show. And I want
Thank you.
you to give people a perspective of what the United Cajun Navy is, because when I first heard about this as it relates to the Nolan Wells case, I had no idea what the Cajun Navy was. At first, I was like, is this a part of the Navy? And then I realized very quickly this may be a private organization that does good work. But can you explain to the audience what exactly is the United Cajun Navy and what's your job description in that?
Sure, absolutely. First of all, thanks for having me. United Cajun Navy, we're a nonprofit. We're a 501c3. Easiest way to explain it is disaster response, relief, and recovery organization. So what I specialize in is search and rescue, search and recovery operations. I help find missing people. But outside of that, our organization does a lot of blue sky stuff. We do food drives. We do toy drive. Last year was close to 600,000 toys we handed out. So we really run the gamut from disasters and blue skies. Community involvement's the biggest thing, the easiest way to explain it.
That's awesome. And it's all volunteer work, or how does that work?
All volunteers, man.
Wow.
100% volunteer.
Wow, that's incredible. And so as it relates to the Nolan Wells case, can you walk me through when you were first notified and what were the first few things that you did as a response?
Sure. So late that night, early Sunday morning, I received a Facebook Messenger call from somebody that had been noticing it on Facebook on what was going on with
Is
all
this
the
July the
messages in
4th?
the post about
Oh, July the 4th or the
be
5th?
early morning, July 5th,
Or the month? Okay.
the 5th. Um, so early morning there, and I started reading into it, right? There were some Facebook posts. Then I got a call. I got a call from Miss Christine. Christine called me up. I'm thinking it was 7:30ish, quarter to 8 that morning, and we discussed what was going on. So I asked a lot of questions. Physical description, and I asked some hard questions. Mental health crisis, any kind of habits, anything like that. And basically, what she told me is that her son had gone out the day before that on the 4th with a bunch of his friends. That's key, with a bunch.
First, a young man goes out with friends on a holiday, doesn't come home. Second, volunteers arrive before law enforcement, bring dogs trained to find bodies, offer their help, and get turned away. Third, the body is found. The coroner finds no visible signs of foul play. Fourth, within days, the narrative hardens into accusations of a specific crime. A racial conflict erupts online. The community that searched together fractures. Fifth, nobody has been formally charged. No autopsy results are public. Yet the case has already been tried in 100 different versions across social media, national news, and activist networks. This is the Nolan Wells story, and it lives in the space between what we can actually document and what we've all decided happened. On July 4th, 2026, Nolan Wells, described by everyone who knew him as what you'd call a model young man, went to Horn Island off the coast of Ocean Springs, Mississippi. He went with a group of friends. He was drinking. That part is established. He did not come home. By the early morning of July 5th, his mother, Christine, was making calls. One of those calls reached the United Cajun Navy, a volunteer organization specializing in search and rescue operations. That's the documented starting point. Josh Gill picked up the phone. He's the incident commander. By his account, verified through text messages and contemporaneous communication, he asked Christine the hard questions first. Mental health crisis? No. Suicidal ideation? No. Any indication of foul play? No. What he got was a mother's account of a group of friends, a holiday, a cohesive unit going out together. That framing matters because it establishes what the family believed at that moment, before narratives solidified.
And did you get any indication that she was concerned about race or it being a factor in this, or foul play or anything like that? Did you, when you first talked to her, because this is fresh, I don't think the media even had an understanding of how she felt being presented to them. You were one of the first people in this intimate time that she was searching for her son, had a chance to communicate with her. At this point in your communication with her, was there any indication that she was concerned about a racial dynamic or any foul play, or was it just a mom looking for, trying to find out what happened to her son?
It was a frantic mother worried about her child. And that's no indications of race, no indications of foul play. She reiterated a couple times, Brandon, that, he went out with his friends. He went out with his friends. So it really made me believe that it was a cohesive unit, a group of guys who went out to go party on the 4th of July on Horn Island. But again, no initial accusations of foul play or anything to do with race. Not at all.
By Sunday morning, July 5th, the Cajun Navy had surface vessels in the water, drones in the air, boots on the ground at Horn Island. This is the documented search effort.
And were there people in the water? Can you explain, what that initial effort was?
Sure. So we had boats that were in the water, and we sent people to Horn Island with a drone as well to start looking at that area. So immediately around Horn Island, with surface vessels, what we call boats, as well as boots on the ground to start, the aerial search with drones. Now, I did reach out to the Coast Guard and ask them if they needed any air support as well. And they said that they had rotary wing in the air. I did have some fixed were available. They told me it was Jackson County Sheriff's Office, that it was their area and their jurisdiction, and they said they didn't need any additional aircraft. So we moved forward with the plan that we had with boats and boots on the ground there.
And while you guys were on the ground, in the water, did you see anything that was concerning? Did you see anything that was an indication of an altercation or any signs of Nolan or anything in that initial search?
No signs of Nolan. No indication of struggle or altercation on the island. But social media began producing tips, people claiming to have seen a young man matching his description on land in surrounding municipalities. The search expanded.
Absolutely. We communicated all day. And I've got the text messages where we talked via text as well as where we spoke on the phone. So I kept her up to speed on what was going on, and she would feed me a little bit of information throughout the day. And again, it was in text. And as that search started to wind down, we again had another conversation. And I explained to her, hey, here's what's going on. As it starts to get dark and dusk comes in, we demobilize and then we start planning for that next day.
Still nothing. Here's where we need to mark a documented tension. When the body was recovered on Monday, the discovery itself became contested in how it was reported, by Josh Gill's account and by the sheriff's department's account as he related. Law enforcement made the discovery.
So from the level of engagement that I saw, let's base it on initial level of engagement. They had a lot of people that were involved with the search, and then immediately after as well. I mean, I was communicating with the sheriff's department closely thereafter. I did not observe or have a feeling of any lack of engagement or anything like that. I think they were engaged. And then as the case moved on, I believe their level of engagement was appropriate because they knew this case is under a microscope. Everybody's out there watching. It's international news.
And I want to just ask you a personal opinion about this because
he was not present for the recovery, but within hours, a coroner's examination took place.
So this is a key part, right? So she asked me to be a part when they go to the coroner's office. So they didn't bring his body to that location. They brought his body to a secondary location as the hospital, the coroner's office. And she asked me to be a part of it. Of course, yes, ma'am, anything I can do to help you. So we got in a convoy and we went that way. We went to the coroner's office, sat down at the table. It was myself, the family, Miss Christine, Mr. Elmore, the coroner. I was right by her. Coroner comes in, and of course, it's difficult. It's a difficult conversation for anybody to have. I'm sure you're familiar with them. The coroner said, he believes that it's Nolan. 99.9% sure, whatever the stat was, but he still wanted to get a swab or get some DNA so they could double check. Said, according to the appearance in the photographs he've seen, it appeared to be Nolan. But he also said something very key, that there was no initial appearance of foul play.
Josh Gill was there for that moment. The coroner examining the remains said he was 99.9% certain this was Nolan based on appearance and identifying features. But here's what needs to sit with us. The coroner also said, on the record, there was no initial appearance of foul play, no blunt force trauma, nothing visible at that preliminary examination. That's not the same as a cause of death. An autopsy would follow. Toxicology would follow. A full examination would follow.
Fulfill all the autopsies and everything that way. I was not a part of identification of the body. We immediately left. So if at some point that evening later on, we went to their house after the coroner's office, if they went back to identify, I don't know. I wasn't, but the immediate meeting with the coroner's office, there was no identification by myself or the family that I was aware of.
And
But in that first moment, with the family present, the indication from the medical examiner was not homicide. This is where the documented record and the narrative begin to diverge. Within days, Benjamin Crump, a high-profile attorney known for civil rights cases, was retained by the family. The legal framing shifted. Questions about foul play that initially weren't part of Christine's thinking became central. Questions about race, which hadn't surfaced in those early search efforts, suddenly anchored everything.
Right. Let's call it the South as a whole. I personally have not had any or observed any gross racial tensions whatsoever prior to this. I think that this case has exacerbated some, and there's been some outside influences that have exacerbated some racial tensions for whatever reason it is. We live in the South. Yes, there's a history and there's a past, and I understand that. But move forward with the way we're living, right? It's 2026. It's a difficult time, man. It's a difficult time in the South. It's a difficult time nationwide, right? But let me say this. Let me put this out there real quick, is that I 110% support Miss Christine and what she's doing. She's a grieving mother, and I've said this from day one. There's no rule book. There's no playbook on how she should act or what she should do. Find the truth and trying to find answers. There's a lot of outside influence that's pushing her in whichever way it is or however it is. But again, I support her. She's got to find the truth so she can start that grieving and healing process. There's some disgusting things that are out there, and we just need to be able to differentiate from that.
Now, here's where media literacy matters. The Cajun Navy commander was asked directly, did Christine express concerns about racial dynamics in those first calls? His answer was explicit no. She repeatedly said he went out with his friends, a cohesive unit. She wanted him found. She wasn't looking for a crime narrative. She was looking for her son. That's the documented account from someone who was in direct contact with her in real time before the legal representation changed the framework.
So it didn't say anything about a crime, but we did discuss the phone that Sunday. So the day before he was found, she called me up and we had a discussion about the phone. She said, hey, Josh, they want the phone. And she said she wasn't too comfortable with sending it to him or giving it or turning over the phone. And here's what I told her. I said, look, that phone was your son's phone, and you've got every right to turn it in and to video everything that they're doing with the phone. Be there for it. If you don't trust the process or some concerns, get your phone and video what they're doing. If you're concerned about losing data, there it is. She seemed to be comfortable with that when I told her that. Look, I'm not law enforcement whatsoever, but I know that she's going through a hard time, and I just wanted to let her know that every part of the step with anything that she has, for her to document if she's afraid of losing some of the data or the integrity of that data.
right, so
Right.
so in the early stages of the phone, she did express, without any coercion whatsoever that you know of, that she believed that there may have been reason for her to turn that phone over.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
What happened next is speculative territory, but it's worth mapping. Josh Gill describes his own communication with Christine dwindling after the attorney's involvement. Lengthy phone calls reduced to emojis and short texts. The relationship changed. Whether that's because the family needed professional representation or because the legal strategy required a different kind of public posture, or both, remains a matter of interpretation. But the shift is documented. The timing is documented. The fact that media narrative changed alongside it is documented. What caused what is where disagreement lies. There's a specific incident that cuts to the heart of this case's unresolved questions. Cadaver dogs, human remains detection dogs, trained specialists brought in after the body was discovered, but the question of whether to use them before the body was found. Josh Gill offered the service. His dogs could search the vessel that Nolan may have been on. If they alerted, it suggests remains were on that boat. If they didn't alert, it suggests they weren't. Binary information. Useful information, the attorney's account. By Josh's account, the concern was this: what if the dogs don't alert? If there's no alert, That means no body on the boat. And if you're building a case that assumes foul play, a negative result from the dogs is evidence against your theory, not for it. Now, the attorneys were not interviewed for this account. Their reasoning was not captured. But the decision to decline a search tool that could have produced objective data, at a moment when objective data about the case was scarce, is itself a documented fact. It happened. It's undisputed. What it means is what we're still arguing about.
This.
Sure. So I was the one who offered the cadaver dogs.
Oh, okay.
I had a conversation with the lead attorney. I had a conversation with the lead attorney, Liza Park. I'd been trying to reach him for a couple of days, and I left message. Couldn't do it. I asked Christine, give me a phone number. I need to talk to somebody. So I sent a text message on, I believe it was the 13th, got a read, no response. And I called that next day on the 14th, had about a 24-minute conversation, but I offered up the services of the cadaver dogs, right? So these are human remain detection dogs. And I told him, I said, hey, look, I've offered them to the sheriff's department, but I'm offering the service to you as well. And here's how it plays out. Those dogs can go to the boat, they can do a search on that boat, and if they alert on that vessel, and they alert as they're working to smell for a cadaver, there's more than likely a pretty big chance that there was a body on that boat. But if those don't alert, it's just the inverse. There may not, and it's a pretty good chance that there wasn't one on there. She explained the concern about them cleaning the vessel. I can pretty much guarantee they didn't clean the vessel with the necessary chemicals or the process that needs to be cleaned. And then that was reconfirmed when I went and spoke to the young men as well, because they told me how they cleaned the boat. And they said, man, Josh, all we did was spray it down with fresh water, because that's a common practice whenever you remove a vessel from salt water. Just spray it down, get the salt of it, and go there. But what I told the lead attorney was, if you would like these services, we'll provide the resource, we'll provide the dogs. You're going to have to get the permission. If it's a warrant, if it's you just asking for permission to look at that vessel, that's on you, not on us. I've got the dogs, you get the permission. What she said was, we'll have to really think about it. We didn't understand that if there's no alert, that means nobody.
Most coverage of the Nolan Wells case focuses on the racial dimensions and the legal accusations. What's less explored is the question of water conditions. Horn Island, in July, with bodies in saltwater, has specific decomposition timelines. The time between disappearance and recovery was approximately 72 hours. The environmental conditions are documented. The recovery location is documented. The coroner's preliminary assessment is documented. Yet most national coverage doesn't engage with these forensic specifics. They're more focused on the political angle, the racial angle, the attorney angle. That gap is real, and it's worth recognizing. Now we reach the question that the documented record doesn't fully resolve. Where exactly did Nolan Wells die? On Horn Island, in the water surrounding it, or elsewhere? How did he come to be in the water? Accident related to intoxication and water conditions he might not have anticipated. Misadventure with friends, a tragedy no one intended, something else. The autopsy results, if they've been completed, have not been made public as of this reporting. The cause of death is not officially released to the general audience. What we have instead is a case where the legal narrative has moved faster than the forensic narrative. Accusations have been made. Specific young men have been named. A racial justice framework has been applied. None of that is baseless. But none of it is yet supported by official autopsy findings, toxicology, or forensic evidence made public. The case is being tried in media and on social media based on incomplete information.
Let's use our noggin, not just to hold a hat on top of it, but let's use our head, right? Look, there's problems. There's racial tensions, granted, got it. Let's be driven by love, and let's not be driven by anger, because when we're driven by anger, we make bad decisions. And I think we need to start making some good decisions in what we do and what we say.
That's not unusual. It's almost standard. But it's worth naming. The Cajun Navy commander makes a point worth underscoring. He says social media is a tool. It can be your best friend or your worst enemy. In the Nolan Wells case, it's been both. Christine used it to mobilize search efforts. It worked. But it also amplified theories, accusations, and racial reframing faster than investigation could move. Volunteers and young men accused of crime both looked at social media and saw versions of events that may or may not be true. The community that came together to search fractured along lines drawn by that media environment.
Sure, and I've been to Horn Island many times, been out there for July 4th in years past. Here's a couple things I want to get very clear with people. Number one, I support Christine. Our organization supports Christine. Number two, the threats and the vitriolic rhetoric, it needs to stop, man. The threats, it's not healthy for the environment. It's not healthy for what's going on. These young boys are taking a beating with threats. It's not good. Next thing is, social media is a great tool. It can be your best friend, but it can be your worst enemy from time to time. Let's just watch what we say. So you're watching, people are looking, the mama Christine's looking at social media, the boys are looking at social media. These people have to move on with their lives. With all these crazy cockamamie stories, one lady said, oh, he could have been dismembered and put in a fish box and put back on the island. Come on, man.
There's a genuine question here, and it's one worth sitting with. If the legal strategy and the media strategy had remained focused on finding Nolan, investigating how he died, and ensuring justice for whatever actually happened, would the outcome be different? Would the community remain intact? Would we have clearer answers by now? Or is a racial justice framework, once invoked, always going to change how a case proceeds and how it's perceived? These are live questions. They're not settled by the facts. They're questions about how we investigate, who we believe, and what we decide to emphasize when information is incomplete. The documented facts remain these: a young man died. A mother lost her son, volunteers searched, an attorney got involved, a narrative shifted, a racial conflict erupted online, an investigation proceeded, and public conclusions about guilt were drawn before autopsy results were released. None of those facts are invented. All of them are, on some level, contested in their meaning. What happens next is what actually matters for the truth. The autopsy report, the toxicology results, any findings about the location and manner of death. If Nolan Wells drowned, if it was accidental or misadventure, that changes everything about the justice framework being applied. If he was harmed, if there was foul play, that demands investigation and accountability. Right now, we don't know which story the evidence supports. And the longer we wait for that evidence while the narrative hardens, the harder it becomes to update our beliefs once the evidence arrives. This case is still unfolding. The investigation is still active. But the framing is already set. That's worth remembering when you hear updates. The facts we'll eventually get may not fit the story we've already constructed. And how we handle that mismatch will say something about who we are. So we're following this one closely. The next development will be the autopsy and official cause of death. That's the evidence that actually settles some of what's been speculated. Until then, if you have information about what happened to Nolan Wells, if you were there, if you know something, the Jackson County Sheriff's Office is still investigating. Reach out. Let the evidence lead. And in the comments, I want to hear from you on this. Do you think a case can be investigated fairly once it becomes a media and political focal point this quickly? Or does the narrative always, at that point, move faster than the truth? It's a genuine question. I don't have a certain answer. But I want to know how you're thinking about it. Comment below. Next, we're diving into a different case entirely. One where the evidence did come first, and where the legal system had to reckon with what it actually proved. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. And if you found this breakdown useful, share it. Let people know there are ways to think about these cases that don't require choosing a side before the evidence is in. Thanks for being here.